J'invite maintenant Philippe Leroux, à venir vous adresser la parole.
Bonjour.
So, to have a lab time with musicians like that, it's something that's great. It's absolutely the best for a composer. It's really experimental work. What we did this week, certainly with me, was very basic work of like a beginning of composition. It's quite rare, and it's great because we can experiment, and we're at the very beginning of the work. So everything's open. So there's different ways of working with electronics. So one can work on the relationship man-machine, even the dramatic aspect of that opposition. One can work on the transgression of spatial temporal framework or reference, like the spatial one, for example. When a musician plays here and we hear over there, something happens between the two that is abnormal in a way. Working also on interaction in the sense of the responsibility of the machine, the human responsibility, or both, and how the two interact. And I chose to work on the question of the model. It's the idea of imitation. The idea of modeling, a bit like what I said before on the interaction that I'm looking for between electronic and instrument. Here, in fact, I propose different electroacoustic models that are really, they're extremely electronic sounds. They're typified. It's not at all sounds that you could find in nature or anything like that. These are sounds that really have a very particular conduit that I do out of synthesis or in other ways. And in fact, I feed them these sounds and I ask them to imitate them. So it creates all kinds of extremely interesting things because, of course, it forces them to be very inventive as far as modes of playing. Not only modes of playing, but relationship of heights and of course, the timbre. And here we're not looking at copying. We're looking to imitate, where children imitate, an imitation that allows experimentalization. It's an approach where I really try to have the music come from the sounds. I think the biggest part of the work is to listen to the sounds and to let them suggest different pathways. Mixed music really takes its entire strength and size when there's a real interaction between the two medium. Meaning that as much the instruments are going to be more in the imitation of the electronics, or the electronics that is going to be, imitating the instruments. And I try to do the two together. At the same time, work the sound and write the partition. I really try the electronic to be inserted in the actual language. So here are the first sounds that I asked them to imitate.
Vous voyez qu'on est quand même extrêmement loin du saxophone.
So we're extremely far away from saxophone here. So very electronic sounds and voice references also. There'll certainly be, like the presence of voice will be important to our project. I don't know exactly yet how, but so do you agree to do a little impro on this? From the things we've seen a bit this week.
Alors, ce que je souhaiterais maintenant, si vous
So
voulez
what
bien,
I'd like to do now,
jouer tout
if
seul,
you
dans le même esprit,
will,
sans
is
les sons électroniques.
play by yourselves in the same spirit, but without the electronic sound. 20 seconds.
Bon, merci. Ils sont formidables.
Okay, thank you. Aren't they great? Absolutely. I find them absolutely great. Okay. Second type of sound, yet again very different. These are more low pitch sounds in a range where saxophones can't go. So that's very important. With a sax quatuor, you can really build the sound from the inside. Like doing sound synthesis, it kind of ties into the idea of electronics where we fabricate your own sound. So the idea is not just to take the sound of alto sax, tenor sax, baritone sax, or soprano sax, but it's really to build one sound, a single sound based on all these elements and mixing them. But of course, very rich, very interesting, changing, that can bend to many different shapes, and because they're instruments that are very different and extremely close. Meaning, like, if they all play together the same note, we'll really have the impression that it's a single instrument.
Alors, petite séquence de mélange.
So a short sequence in mix.
Alors maintenant que les instruments.
So now only the instruments.
Je sais pas pourquoi le saxophoniste
I don't
soprano-
know why the soprano sax is laughing. Me neither, says someone.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, vous voyez,
So
ça donne
thank
lieu
you
quand même à
much.
des choses assez
So
intéressantes.
it gives quite interesting results. So
Après chaque,
after each work session like this, my question is, okay, now you're going to explain to me how you do all this. So it's not always easy because between
un travail musculaire,
a muscular playing work as far as the mouth, the fingers, the breath, the tongue, and then to be able to verbalize that, it's a totally different thing. But we succeeded, I think, huh? We got there, right?
alors, troisième exemple,
So, third example,
ce que j'appelle des sons
what I called saw sounds, which are
vocaux.
vocal sounds.
Je vous fais écouter.
And I'll have you listen to this.
Alors le mix.
So the mix now.
La même chose sans l'électronique.
The same thing without the electronics.
Merci beaucoup. Alors peut-être vous allez
Thank
vous
you
demander,
for that. You might ask yourselves,
vous allez vous demander comment est-ce que ça va faire une pièce sur ça.
how will this actually create a piece? Because we're in very different universes. So my way of working, not always, but sometimes, actually often, is to take elements that are in fact extremely different, very heterogeneous, and instead of starting with a germinal seed from which we could expand a piece by development, by variations, whatever, here we're starting with very different elements and to find what links them.
Et en fait,
And in fact, the music is happening not on the elements themselves, but on what links them, on the different processes that they can transform each other and stuff like that. So,
deux exemples.
I have yet two examples to have you listen to. The first one was actually a nice discovery for all of us, and I was very proud of that actually, because the members of Quasar really know their instrument, and they know their instruments very well, and they very well know all the different types of modes of playing that you can extract from these instruments. And with the work that we've done, we ran across something that neither myself nor them heard before. So we'll have you listen to this.
Alors, il faut juste que je trouve.
I just have to find where this is. Here it is.
Donc là, de la même façon, on est dans des sons
So here again, we're in very over-acute electronic sounds. The sax doesn't have a chance to get there, but it led to something else.
Voilà, il y a une petite réminiscence vocale.
There's a little vocal reminiscence at the end of that. So we'll do the same thing with you, if you will.
puis je vais vous demander de jouer tout seul un peu.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to play alone now.
Merci.
All
Alors,
right, thank you for that.
ce son-là, sur les-
So this acute sound that we have not christened yet, we're going to have to find a name for it. Yesterday, we discovered a new way of playing on the saxophone that neither them nor I knew.
Tu veux le faire, André, juste
You want to do this, André, just once alone?
Voilà, donc c'est un son sur aigu.
So it's over acute sound with a guttural flat. So we were very happy with that. Sometimes we have these kinds of satisfaction. So another type of satisfaction that's more personal to me now, because it concerns the shape of the piece. We worked on the imitation of a kind of bell that
Modulation de fréquence.
I did in frequency modulation with different wavelengths, and this is it.
Et plus tard, ce qui devient
And
ça,
later it becomes this.
et pour finir,
And
devient
in ending, it becomes something like this.
juste une aparté.
Just an aparté, you see that granulation and vibration texture, that's very important.
On entend bien aussi cette notion
You
d'élasticité.
can hear, well, the density of the sound transforms. Sound is elastic. You hear a contraction, a retention of the energy sound-wise, and then a release after that.
Ok, alors on
Okay,
va essayer-
so let's try to do all of this together.
Donc c'est intéressant parce que
It's interesting because this work of imitation of electronics, in fact, can generate sound at the same time, writing processes and shape.
voilà, maintenant le travail ça va être
So now the work is going to consist in doing or creating a masterpiece with all of that. To find a logic, a coherence of the musical language with all these different elements. It's not the easiest, actually.
l'idée c'est vraiment de
The idea is to build something that's going to be very organic in the musical unfolding, that each sound be interesting and fascinating and very solid.
Alors voilà, et pour moi ça c'était.
So there we go. This was very interesting for me because I understood by listening to them. I said, okay, this is what's going to create the shape of the form. This repetitive element of synthetic bells like that will be the, you could say, like a skewer kind of thing. Like you've got like the skewer going through the different pieces of meat. And so the point of the skewer is that. So we'll hear that, and then we'll hear something else, and we'll come back to that, something else, and we'll always return. So we were quite happy with our week, actually, because we succeeded just with this little imitation process in generating modes of instrumental playing, also new sounds, literally musical elements that we can work on for the piece, and informal elements also for the piece. And so thank you much. So it's not with the idea of going further. I was going to explore something else. So at the end of the week, what I have is a range of things to explore. And for me, it's obvious that composing music is creating a relationship with people who are the musicians, but also the people who listen. And it's proposing to these people something that they can own, that they can own, or propose them sufficiently enough stuff so that they can make their own choice within that, compose their own music, actually. Composing a piece is not just a composer that composes. Here's the one who listens, and the musician who will compose his own piece, which will be different than his neighbor's. And that's it. I mean, there were some really excellent moments. We laughed at times. We discovered things at times. It was very enriching for me for the following. And that's it. Only good stuff.